All right, so today is September 7th, 2022. We're in the Minnesota Veterans Home in Minneapolis. My name is Kevin Yee. I'm the interviewer, and today I'm here with Mr. Marcus Johnson. So thank you a ton for coming today.
You bet.
Yeah. We'll just get started. So can you tell me where and when you were born?
I was born in Robbinsdale, but lived in North Memorial Hospital.
Yeah.
And but we lived in New Hope, Minnesota, which is a suburb of Minneapolis.
Yeah. And who are your parents and what did they do?
Dean Johnson and Marlis Johnson. My dad was an explosive technician for Honeywell.
Yeah.
And then my mother was a secretary receptionist for a oral surgeon at North Memorial Hospital.
So what did you do while growing up?
All sorts of stuff, paper route, what normal kids do. We had, back then we had backwoods surrounding us.
Yeah.
And we had horse farms, and we had land as far as, now it's all filled in with industrial parks and stuff like that. So we got to fish. We got what normal kids do.
Yeah. And did you have any kind of military background in your family?
My dad, Navy.
Yeah.
And so I originally, when I thought of the military, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, and was leaning towards the Marine Corps, but they were too, I didn't like the way that they were trying to recruit me, and so I initially wanted to go into Special Forces.
Yeah.
And so reading the brochures, I was kind of taken to the survival skills and the description of the Rangers.
Yeah.
So I enlisted as a Ranger.
So when did you know that you wanted to join?
Well, my prospects, I wasn't really getting, I was going through community college, and so it was just a liberal arts college.
Yeah.
And they didn't have any of these programs they have nowadays. And so I had no real direction, so I thought, why not go into the military?
Yeah. And how old were you?
18.
Yeah. So was there like a specific moment that inspired you to join?
As a kid, you're always playing, either Cowboys and Indians or, today they have video games. We didn't have that back then, so, the imagination run wild, reading books, the Western books, science fiction, all that stuff. And Heinlein and a bunch of other writers wrote about Starship Troopers and stuff like that. So, and then they had Dune and with Frank Herbert and that, and so James Michener and Robert Ludlum novels. That's what kind of steered me towards that kind of discipline and rigor.
Was it like a sense of adventure?
Yeah,
that you wanted?
definitely.
Yeah.
I was climbing mountains. We'd take trips out west and climbing around Mount Rainier and the Tatoosh Range. My first mountain was Pinnacle Peak, and that was the first free climb that I did on rocks. So canoeing, you name it.
Yeah. So once you enlisted, how did your friends and family feel about you joining?
They were kind of like every one of my family has gone through college.
Yeah.
I think I'm the only one. We had the Broughton side, my mother, and on my dad's side there was only 2 female cousins. So
Yeah.
I think I'm the only one. I'm the kind of the black sheep of the family that went. So
Yeah.
they were kind of iffy. They were kind of scared.
Yeah.
Me going into the military.
Did they think that you'd be in danger a lot?
They never said it, but I think they did.
Yeah. But did they mostly support you?
Yes, they did.
Yeah. So, when did you go off to boot camp then?
Boot camp was in the summer of '83, and so that was probably the hottest part down there down in Georgia, Fort Bragg, Georgia.
Yeah.
Fire ants, I remember those on the firing ranges.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. What was a daily day like when you're in boot camp?
Well, the funny thing is, this is an interim when they were starting to lean towards the way that the Air Force treated their recruits.
Yeah.
They had Sand Hill, which had these kind of like condominiums, like a 2-person to a room. And we had Harmony Church. We had old World War II barracks, open bay, like you saw in Full Metal Jacket,
Yeah.
like in Forrest Gump, where you had the bunk beds, and then and the lockers and standing on the line and all that.
Yeah.
And so, and we had to have fire guard. So those they were a fire hazard really.
Yeah.
And people smoking, and it was just so we had hourly watches, and that's how we learned discipline and duty. Your standing orders. So yeah, ate fast, and they were just trying to break you down to build you up is what they're trying to do. So you definitely slept good at night, and so.
What kind of training did you have?
Infantry training. What you'd expect. Most people have MOSs now that, nobody hardly thinks about infantry anymore, but this is basic grunt stuff. Fire maneuvering, fire squads, maneuvering, tactics, working with weapons, and also the physical aspects, obstacle courses and stuff like that. So they had hand grenade ranges, they had rifle ranges, they had we learned how to take apart, put together the weapons, and I'm trying to think of what more I could say, but I'm thinking also discipline, and everything had to be a certain way and a standard operating procedure. So
Yeah.
I think that about covers it. That was in basic training. Then in Airborne, it was everything having to do with jumping out of a perfectly good aircraft.
Yeah.
So, who would want to jump out of a perfectly good aircraft? So, anyway, they kind of said it was like three times volunteer. I volunteered I wasn't drafted.
Yeah.
So I volunteered to be in the military, and then I volunteered to Airborne, which is not everybody is up for doing that.
Yeah.
And then I joined to be in harm's way, being a ranger. So I was a 3-time volunteer.
Yeah.
And man, there's even more. I mean, as a ranger, you learn to use all the weapons of the world, be able to pick up any weapon, and basically they have many jobs, in the protection of the Constitution and people, Americans all over the world. You have to be able to do things like amphibious training. They had us basically. I'm not going to say they try to drown you or anything like that, but just make sure that you don't panic underwater.
Yeah.
And so, they put you in stressful situations and you get out of them.
Yeah.
So, that was like, to put it into, just a small little period of time. What do you think Rangers do?
All I know about them is that they were rappelling up the cliffs at
Point to Hole.
Yeah.
Yep. That was Rangers lead the way, and so they had Rangers back in the Revolutionary War, and they have the standing orders. The standing orders, kind of like Boy Scouts have.
Yeah.
And so you got to be ready to go at a moment's notice, and make sure your rifle's ready and your hatchet scoured. And it's an old tradition. Nobody ever carried a hatchet, but
yeah,
you got the idea. And so we were in a different time back then, where they started branching off into like Delta Force and most of the special operations had key roles, and so they were trying to make a conventional. They're trying to turn everybody into like Rangers.
Yeah.
So when you think of commandos, that's what a Ranger is.
Okay.
Ranger does.
Yeah.
So we did it, ship to shore, shore to ship. We could air insertions where we would come in by helicopter. We did stable operations. We'd do when you come in on helicopters, you don't just to screw them up, you act like you were landing, and then you get up. It's called false insertion, and so they wouldn't know exactly where you were, and so we were hand in hand with the aviation battalion, and we can attach ourselves to even armor.
Yeah.
So we jumped out of Chinooks, which are the two-propped.
Yeah.
And then we jumped out of the Blackhawks.
Oh.
So the difference between jumping out of an aircraft, which is 4 seconds, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, it's actually 2 more seconds. And that'll give you a little pause.
Yeah.
If you don't feel that after 4 seconds, all of a sudden that 2 extra seconds, wow. So anyway, and it was all static line. It wasn't until later on in my career that I actually did, the paracommando shoots, like the white or the Knights, the Golden Knights or whatever. And most of my jumps were with equipment. So what that means is you had your weapon by your side here, and then you had your rucksack, which is close to 80 pounds between your legs, and then you had a parachute on your back. So when you loaded up, it was like you were walking like a penguin.
Yeah. So of all those like training things, what do you think was the hardest part for you?
It's all hard. It's just a matter of challenging yourself. I think the road marches were the toughest, and being able to time going your distances and over varied terrain, and making your times, making your marks. And I think most people think, oh, they just get in a Jeep or get in a deuce and half or get in a thing. We walked. When you're airborne, you were your mode of transportation. And when we jumped into like Arctic, all we had were sleds, and we were the dogs.
Yeah.
So we had either snowshoes or cross-country skis, and so in the sand. And so in peacetime, you can't just leave your chute. You had to learn to roll your chute up and put it in the parachute bag and wrap it up in a neat little thing for the riggers to pick up. So you were your own support.
Yeah.
So I can't really think of anything that was really the hardest, other than well, when you're under fire, I guess. But you're by that time it's just part of you.
Yeah. Do you remember any of your drill instructors?
I remember the very first ones were my very first drill instructors were Staff Sergeant Williams and Staff Sergeant Dilbeck. But we were in Harmony Church.
Yeah.
And I was in the Black Sheep. We were a conglomeration of. They had Samoan National Guard. We had Pennsylvania Reserves and National Guard, and then we had ahead of us was Special Forces, but then we had a bunch of Ranger recruits.
Yeah.
And so they kind of cycled us through, and we got many. It wasn't just the two, but those are the two that I remember.
Yeah. So after like a long day and you came back to the barracks, what would you guys do?
Sleep.
Yeah.
Pretty much, or get the stuff ready for the next day, and then, I don't remember being able to play basketball or anything like that.
Yeah.
No, there wasn't any real downtime, and if that was spent, it was usually polishing our boots or cleaning stuff.
Yeah.
So that was like a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
But I had a little bit of schooling, and so I kind of had to adopt. There were some guys that were like really, we called them milk toast. They were really green. They were really, and so I kind of got stuck with three of them, and just that was in and of itself trying to keep them, from quitting.
Yeah.
Because one of the guys, his mother sent him into the military. He didn't want to be in the military, so you get the idea.
Yeah. Do you still remember the people you were with in boot camp and Ranger school?
Boot camp, I just remember the guys that made it through Airborne with me.
Yeah.
And I remember the Pennsylvania National Guard because I ended up later on when I was in the 82nd Airborne, we went up and train them during their 2-week, every year they spent 2 weeks at Fort Indian Gap, and I met up with them, and I'm like, and they were like, they were just awestruck. It was just like, you know, I'm not gonna say they're country bumpkins, but you know, I'd been through a lot by then.
Yeah.
And I was sergeant by that time, and so.
And you guys were kind of like the elite.
Elite? I wouldn't say elite. It was more like a religion.
Yeah.
It was, if you thought you were elite, you weren't a ranger.
Yeah.
You keep low key, down low, no fatigues,
Yeah.
always civilian clothes. Whenever we were off post, the only way you possibly could tell us was our haircuts, I think. So if you did anything, you know, even writing a bad check, you were like, out, you're out.
Yeah. So was humility like a big part of the culture?
Yes,
Yeah.
big time. And no Hollywood.
Yeah.
There was no John Wayne, no. That was kind of part of the doctrine. They have a Ranger creed, and you know, even when I got out of the Rangers, it was I kind of tried to instill that in all of the guys that I were underneath me when I became squad leader and fire team leader.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Boy Scouts.
Yeah. So, how long did all of this training take before you were active?
It was ongoing. I was basically, for the first year, I would say it was all, you know, you had the 8 weeks, you had the AIT, and then I went through jump school, and then it was on to up to Fort Lewis, and it was a Ranger Doctrinational Program, and then once you got to your unit, you know, they'd send you off to other schools. They had, when I was in the 82nd Airborne, because I was in the Ranger Battalion, they sent me, because they wanted to make their unit look good, they send your best people. And
Yeah.
so they'd send me to, like, they had this anti-tank weapon back then, which is obsolete, I think, called the Dragon. And so the tank identification, and then it's basically a wire guided missile system, and it had like 64 jets for correcting, and you had to keep this big scoped on your target. So once the initial blow, which is huge, you couldn't zap back, you had to ease it back because it was making little corrections as you go. If you went like this, so yeah, we went, you know, they had Recondo School, which is basically commando school,
Yeah.
rappelling. They had, you know, air assault, pathfinders, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and when we weren't training, we were in support mode. They say that all of the other MOSs, which is a jobs, a name for jobs in the military, were to support the infantry.
Yeah.
But in peacetime, it's the other way around. So we would go on details to help support the people that were supporting us. So
Yeah.
interesting combination.
So, with all like that continuous training, what's like your most iconic memory of all of it?
Well, I've got a few. They set us up against. They have this National Training Center in Fort, I think, at Fort Irwin or Camp Irwin, where they trained Soviet tactics. They have these visual modified tanks and motorized vehicles that the Russians use.
Yeah.
And so we were the first battalion, first 504, with attachments. We had other help go up against this, the NTC, National Training Center. And to have an airborne unit go up against a motorized regiment, it was kind of cool. And so, you know, going to different countries and, you know, just showing what Americans were like, just kind of that we're not, you know, bad people, and that we're here to help.
So, what were some of the deployments that you went on?
There was a deployment to Honduras, basically to guard engineers, or be in an overwatch position for engineers making landing strips. And then, you know, Fort Indian Town Gap, when we were supporting the reserves, or their training, we were advisors for them. They had the Reforger, well, joint mission with NATO forces.
Yeah.
And we also aggressed against the first stagers in the URA National Forest, for which is in North Carolina, against the first stage SF Special Forces.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of like, it's called OP4. That's a like short term for mimicking or opposing force.
Yeah.
So, yeah. When we went to the National Training Center, they wouldn't allow us on post, and so we had to set up a tent city. And so, you know where Death Valley is?
Yeah.
Okay, so right about the mouth of the Death Valley is where Fort Irwin was, and to spend the days and nights in the desert.
And with all of this, what surprised you the most about military life?
The 24/7. I think if I had it all to do over again, I think I would have maybe found maybe a more concentrated MOS, to where something that I could use on when I got on to, you know, back in the outside world.
Yeah.
So I got to see what people are like, what people can go through, and it kind of gave me, it's like a study of the human condition, and how people react to the situation that they're given. I mean, the military isn't for everybody, and so when people go into the military, I remember there were a bunch of guys in there that they had a choice. They could go to jail, or they could go into the military, and I volunteered.
Yeah.
So, you know, so you got all different walks of life, and I think I matured. I think it made me a better person.